movement, because if you look at the makeup of our trade union members, it is something that is quite apparent that there are a lot of Black people within the trade union movement. And just for clarity, when we use the word Black, we use it in a political context to apply to people who are African Caribbean, Asian, Chinese, Arabic, etc., but also people of dual heritage. So that's the context we're using the word Black. Also, just to remind everybody that we are recording these meetings. So if you don't want your face to appear, quite happy for you to keep your camera switched off. And the reason why we're recording the meeting is because we know that some of us will not be able to come to the meetings at lunchtime due to the fact that our work roles don't always give us the flexibility. So all of these meetings will be recorded and will be shared at the end. So first of all, before I introduce our first speaker, I just want to say that, you know, we have actually come quite a long way. There's still a lot more to do, but I just want to pay tribute to two Black trade unionists that are very prevalent in the trade union movement at the moment. First one is Daniel Kabedi. He's the General Secretary of the National Education Union. The NEU is the largest education union in Europe and is also the third largest in the TUC. So to have a Black person at the head of that union, I think is quite a statement. Daniel actually has been a rep since 2013. And in 2017 was awarded a National Blair Peach Award for outstanding contribution to anti-racist work. And in 2020, he was elected Senior Vice President of the NEU. And in 2021, he was elected as National President of the NEU. And then in 2023, he was elected as General Secretary and is still General Secretary as we speak. Another person I think that we need to celebrate as well is Dr. Patrick Roach. For those of you who don't know Dr. Patrick Roach, he began working for the NASUWT, that's the other teaching union, in 1998. He became a Deputy General Secretary of the union in 2010. And then he served on the General Council of the TUC from 2017. In 2020, he became General Secretary of the NASUWT. And he's actually currently the General Secretary, but he will unfortunately be standing down next year. The other important contribution that Dr. Patrick Roach has made is that he's chair of the TUC Anti-Racism Task Force. And what that's all about is about shining a light on racism, not just within the workplace, but also within the union structures, so that we can do more and do better to try and actively encourage Black people to have more of a stand and also to be more prevalent, not just within the trade union membership of the rank and file, but also within the higher echelons of the trade union movement. And before I hand over to our first speaker, I'm just going to end with a quote that he said. What he said of the Anti-Racism Task Force is that we are determined that the Anti-Racism Task Force group will mark another important chapter in the history of our trade union movement's fight against racism and racial injustice at work, and that it will be a powerful force for change. So these sessions, we're hoping, will inspire you to be part of that change. So without further ado, I'm going to invite you to our first speaker, introduce you to our first speaker, Jacqueline Clark. Jacqueline is somebody who works in the Home Office. And she's given me a little bio, but I'm going to let Jackie tell you a little bit about herself. And then after that, obviously we'll be followed by 3 more speakers, and I'll introduce them after Jackie has spoken. Thank you. Jacqueline, over to you.
Thank you very much, Tracy. And thank you for inviting me to be on the panel. So I just want to give you a brief insight of my journey and how I ended up at the Home Office. So when I left school, I went straight into schools myself, and I was supporting Black underachieving boys. I started off as a assistant teacher, and then I worked my way up to become a BAME coordinator. After that, I left the education to go into having my own business, where I had a Caribbean takeaway. That was a very interesting few years. Unfortunately, the credit crunch came in, so I applied for a job in the civil service. I started off as an agency worker, as an admin officer, sorry. That was a really interesting. And then I applied to become an EO, and that's an executive officer. That gave me the opportunity to go overseas. I worked in India. I also worked in Istanbul and Belfast for a period of time. Came back to the UK, and then I applied for a higher position, a higher executive officer, and I became a training lead. That was a really enjoyable experience, gave me lots of opportunities, met lots of people, and collaborated with other organisations. I've always been interested in the PCS, and I did start off as an advocate, and that was helping hand out leaflets, just talking to people, asking them to become more involved with the union, and explaining what the benefits are. From becoming an advocate, I then went on to do the course and became a representative. So I've been doing that since 2023. And I've recently become the vice chair and held my first meeting a couple of weeks ago, which I really enjoyed. So that's just like a brief journey of how I'm here. So I am a fully trained representative. I do support people in the union when they're having issues with in the workplace. And as I said, I'm the vice as well. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Jackie. And I think it's really important, again, just to shine a light on our reps, because I think sometimes one of the questions we always get is, what's it like being a rep? What's it like, trying to progress through the ranks of the civil service? And I think that's going to be something we'll come on to in another meeting. But yeah, thanks, Jacqueline. That's really, really useful and really helpful. And it's really good to have you here as a rep. So again, like I said, if there's any questions for Jacqueline, yeah, and I think the point to make as well, Jacqueline is also Black Northern Women, part of Black Northern Women, Elevating Your Presence
Yes.
and Voice. And
Sorry about
also,
that.
that's okay, Jacqueline. And she's also the co-founder of Black Northern Women. So again, don't underestimate your achievements, because I think one of the things we're not very good at is celebrating the things that we do, because we're used to being minimized sometimes outside. We sometimes do it to ourselves. And I think that's to our detriment, really, and to the detriment of others. So yeah, so thanks for that, Jackie.
Thank you.
So our next speaker, most of you know, is Hector Wesley. And I'm going to allow Hector to introduce himself, because I'm conscious of the need for us to get to hear Hector, but also for the questions at the end. Hector, over to you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much for that, Tracy. Hopefully we can hear me. I'm Hector Wesley. I'm currently one of the national vice presidents of PCS, and I'm also currently the president of Revenue and Customs Group. And always enjoy being invited to meetings like this during Black History Month. So I want to echo my own thanks for people taking the time to join this meeting. There's a few things I want to cover in my contribution, but I want to start off really about my own personal journey as an individual, because actually I didn't set out to become a trade unionist. That didn't happen. I joined the then DSS in 1992. Basically, I graduated from uni the year before. There was a big recession. I was unemployed for quite a while, and the civil service was the first job that will take me on, basically. And it was very interesting when I was signing on, and I said that I was going to be getting a job with the DSS, because, oh, that's a really good place to go and work. Really, really good to work in the civil service. You've done all right there. So I joined in June 1992, and I didn't plan to be a civil servant all these years later. But the reason why what brought me to trade unionism is that when I was in the workplace, in that office, I worked in Wedge House in Blackfriars Road, just in South London, just south of Blackfriars Bridge. If you know London, particularly, you might recognise the geography. I saw a lot of injustice in the workplace. And you had local management, SOs. Where I worked those days, the SEOs were like gods in those offices, and they got away with all sorts. I remember one infamous occasion where the SEO could self-certify their expenses. So they used to buy furniture on public funds like Chesterfield settees and all sorts of stuff. And there was real bad injustice, and members were treated terribly. And I joined the union straight away, first day, because when I first joined, as part of my induction, I had a meeting with the local rep, and he said, sign there, he joined the union, and that's what I did. I signed up. I didn't know any better. I said, okay, if you sign there, you join the union, that's where it went. And basically, I saw so much injustice. We had a meeting, and we had a meeting with the local members and the sub-branch steward. And we said, look, all this stuff is going on. People being treated terribly, people being harassed by senior management. And the rep said, and he made this phrase, goes, well, Hector, if you think you can do any better, why don't you try it becoming a rep then? And actually, I thought, okay, well, so I did. I put my name forward, and it was really interesting when I stood for local office steward. The other candidate in the election was my line manager. And it was really interesting. The day of the election, the branch secretary came to do the election. My manager called in all the members of staff and asked them who are you going to vote for in this election. And I actually won that election by 1 vote, because it was a really sophisticated electorate, because people knew who was going to vote for who. And I won that election by 1 vote. And that's what set me on my journey, really. And that takes me one of the people I want to celebrate today. Because actually, one of the things that I don't think we're as good at as we should be is actually recording the achievements of our predecessors as reps. And the name Roland Biosa comes to mind, because Roland worked at the same office as me. And Roland was an NEC member at the time, and he was an NEC member for quite a while. And he probably more than anybody else influenced my trade union career and got me to, and basically encouraged me to put myself forward for things within the union. I mean, Roland was Roland was something else in terms of a character. I mean, he campaigned not only in this country but across Europe for race equality. I remember him going to meetings with the European Commission to talk about European directives, which are like European legislation about on race equality, and he was he had a really big contribution in terms of advancing the cause of race equality within the trade union, not only in this country but elsewhere. And the thing is, I googled Roland Biosa last night. I thought, let's see what I can find of Roland Biosa, and there's very, very little. Very, very little. And I was concerned about that, and because there should be an awful lot more about what he actually did, for members in PCS and predecessor unions, but also in the wider TUC. So I want to make reference to him. I want to make reference to Adam Khalif. Adam Khalif, he's currently a distinguished life member of PCS. He was formerly on the NEC, and I mean, I worked alongside Adam for many, many years, and again, he did an awful lot to actually encourage me and support me in sometimes quite difficult situations in my time in the civil service. So I want to definitely pay tribute. I want to definitely pay tribute to him. One is a slightly off on a tangent, but hopefully people can understand why I'm referencing her, and that's Diane Abbott. Diane Abbott, by coincidence, is my local MP, because I live in Hackney North. Diane has been a supporter of PCS for many, many years, and as well as other unions. She was one of the first members of the PCS parliamentary group, and she's always been supportive of our union's campaigns. And I just want to basically use this opportunity just to thank her personally for the work that she's done and support PCS members, but also members of other unions who have engaged in struggles over the years. I'm really, really glad that she's now mother of the house, because that's really, really good. Because one of the things I noticed about being mother of the house is that, don't know if you know, when he stood at the State Open in the Parliament, they had the procession of the MPs from the House of Commons to the House of Lords. She's at the front of the queue now. So even government ministers have to go behind her in that procession. And the other thing as well, which I think is really, really good, is as mother of the house, whenever she stands up now to go into in a debate, she has to be called by the speaker. The speaker can't ignore her. Well, you might have seen if you watch Parliament at all, people, all MPs up and down, trying to catch the speaker's eye. And sometimes, often, they don't get caught. The speaker doesn't call them in. But given her role now as mother of the house, whenever she wants to intervene in the debate, the speaker has to call her by convention. And I just think it's really, really fitting that she got that role. And I'm just really, really glad that, given all the difficulties she's had over the years, particularly recently, whether she's going to be a Labour candidate or not, I'm really, really glad that she's got that particular role. So I wanted particularly to pay tribute to those 3 people. Bit about my role in HMRC as group president. One of the things I'm conscious of is, and we've not solved a lot. We've not solved a lot of this. It's still a work in progress. part of my preparation for this meeting, I've gone back and looked at some of the stuff that's happened over the last 3 years. And I remember, for example, going to an office a few years ago. I won't name the office, but there was like a swastika by the lifts. And the swastika was there for months and nobody did anything about it. And I thought, this is ridiculous. And the only reason why management eventually took action and got rid of that swastika is I put an article on the PCS website saying, does HMRC care about racism? And I actually gave I put that as an example. HMRC went mad when they saw the article on the website. And then when I gave them the example, I showed them the photograph, going, here, this is the swastika, and it's been there for months. Somebody tried to argue it was a Hindu peace symbol, therefore it wasn't a problem. We had all this sort of nonsense, but we got rid of it. We got rid of it. One of the things I was conscious of, and I'm going back to some of my old papers, 2019, there was a spate of racist incidents in the organisation, and we were getting reports from various parts of the country of I won't go into the details of the example because they really are quite shocking, but I remember putting out a briefing to members and saying, look, this is not acceptable. We've raised it with the most senior levels of HMRC management. And we're not having this. We're gonna deal with this. And if people get caught doing this, they're gonna get the book thrown at them. Fast forward a little bit to 2020, George Floyd gets murdered. And that then heightens that brought to the surface a lot of things that actually people were suppressing in terms of behaviours that they're being subjected to. So we had a meeting with HMRC about a lot of this, and we then discussed and actually brought into focus race equality. Well, there's two bits actually. The first point, we did what's called a race disparity audit, and we systematically, using data, we tried to understand the experience of black workers in the organisation, and there was quite a large report that was published, and I'm happy to share a copy with it if people are interested. That 45-page report that actually explained in quite a lot of detail how black members of staff in particular were being disadvantaged in a number of areas. For example, career progression, people being disciplined, and so on. So on the back of that, we had a discussion in 2020 in the summer about a race equality action plan, and it was then published. So one of the things that's interesting, going back, looking at what's happened recently, or currently, I should say, in terms of the Tory leadership election, for example, is one of the people who had to clear that document in HMRC before it was published was one Kemi Badenoch, because she was the Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury. And I'm just thinking it was interesting that she did actually clear that document to go out. And the reason why I reference that is, given what some of her recent pronouncements on a number of equality-related matters, it is interesting that she actually did clear that clear that action plan, and actually authorised it to be published, and actually authorised it being, put into implementation. So we did quite a lot of work, and a lot of progress has been made in terms of trying to deal with the issues that members are facing in the workplace. But one of the things I'm conscious of is I don't think we're anywhere near done. Anywhere near done. And I think that's where I think the value of black trade unions comes in, because I think it's important that black trade unionists get involved and continue to get involved. I really applaud the initiative of having black safety reps. And I really do encourage more black members to become health and safety reps. That is really, really important. I'll give one example as to why I think that's really important. About a year or so, 18 months ago, I became aware, unofficially actually, that there was an issue on staff working on telephony on the call centres, in the call centres, and they were getting lots of racial abuse from customers. And it was HMRC that brought this to my attention. I didn't get told this by, local reps and offices or anything like that. It's HMRC that actually brought it to my attention that, there was a real issue in terms of racial abuse on telephony. And they did some research. This is HMRC's figures. They estimated that for black staff working in the call centres in HMRC, 1 in 5 of the calls they got from customers, they resulted in some form of racial abuse. And I was just completely shocked and staggered by that. One of the things they didn't look at was that was inbound telephony, but actually HMRC often rings out people. For example, debt management. We have debt management union that go, people that pay their tax, people that owe money on tax, for example. And the situation was actually even worse. We had all sorts. We had black staff who were saying that when they were ringing people up, they were being accused of being con artists from Nigeria, all this types of stuff. Really, really horrible stuff. One of the interesting things is I asked to listen to some of because all these calls are recorded. And I asked to listen to some of the calls. Can I listen to the calls? HMRC to this day would not let me listen to any of the calls. They won't let me see any calls, right? And I said, well, can you at least let me have a look at this transcript? And they go, no, well, because basically they were just too concerned about my reaction if I was to hear the calls or see the transcripts. But we have been working together for quite some time to actually try and address this issue. And we've been clear that we want zero tolerance in terms of all of this. At one point in HMRC, there was a recorded message. Somebody rang up HMRC. They used to get a recorded message saying we will not tolerate abuse. And part of the reason why that was put in was because of that. They took the message off recently, and I wasn't particularly happy that they did it. But we're quite clear. It's a current project at the moment where we actually are monitoring the situation really, really closely. And we actually are encouraging everybody, if they get an abusive call, to make sure they report it. And if we need to take action, we will take action. And sometimes some of these calls definitely fall into the category of hate crime. And we've made it clear to HMRC where it falls into that category, we need to get the police involved. And HMRC have accepted that that's what should happen. So there's work to be done in terms of that. In terms of talent schemes, because one of the things, again, was literally in HMRC concepts, one of the there was a specific talent scheme to encourage black staff to progress called Embrace. And PCS had a large part to play in actually establishing Embrace in the organisation. But one of the things that's interesting is HMRC do not ever want to accept the contribution that PCS did to actually get embraced and actually get it implemented within the organisation. And one of the things they tried to do this year is they tried to cut Embrace and other talent programs completely. We argued against it and they are continuing. However, the number of places on those schemes has been restricted in particular. So it's something, again, that we're looking at. One of the current things I'm looking at the moment, because I'm a compliance caseworker and I do visits, I visit customers. So it's not telephony, but I go out and see customers. Again, some of the survey work we've done indicates that actually a lot of our compliance caseworkers that go out and do visits do get a very, very hard time. We've had reports of verbal abuse. We've even had reports of physical abuse whilst on visits. And again, that's something that we actively are looking to try and address. And we're putting the pressure on the department to say you need to sort these issues out, and you need to protect your staff a lot more than you actually are doing. So I think the key thing for me is why it's important that black trade unions get involved is unless we're playing our full part, we're not going to get results that we want to see as black members. That's just the reality. I mean, one of the things I know given my role in HMRC, I tend to find out about all the serious race cases in the organisation. Eventually, at one point or the other, I'll be asked for the advice about how do I handle this or how do I handle that. And and some of the stuff that we get is very, very bad, very, very bad, very, very bad. Real blatant racism, real blatant Islamophobia, for example, that we have to deal with. So there's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of work to be done in terms of that. But I think the key thing is it is quite rewarding if you get a result, because I think certainly black trade unions, along with all other trade unions, do make a difference in the workplace. So I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say it's really, really lovely and all that, because it can sometimes be really, really tough. But I do think the key thing for me and what keeps me going is I think we make a difference. We really do make a difference in the workplace. And that's what I think is quite satisfying. And I think talking about black trade unions, and I'll end at this point, because one of the things that I'm glad to do in my role in the national union is I'm the chair of the international committee. And one of the things that I think is interesting, although we will look at things in this country are not as good as we'd like, actually, you know, look at comparing Britain to other parts of Europe, for example, we're doing really, really well. I mean, for example, you gave 2 examples, Tracy, of black union general secretaries. I would struggle to come up with a black trade union general secretary in mainland Europe. I'd really struggle. I can't think of one. I mean, one of the things I would notice, I mean, I went to a conference recently of European public sector trade unionists called EPSU in Bucharest. And it was interesting, apart from the delegations from the UK trade unions, just how few black delegates were at that conference. So I think, although the reason I'm saying is to put things in a context, to say actually, yeah, things are not brilliant in this country, but actually, there's other parts of Europe that are looking to us as a beacon to say, actually, we're doing really, really well with it in terms of race equality, and actually are looking to us to say, look, what can you do to help us and guide us and support us in the struggles that we're facing? So I'm just conscious that I don't want to go off my time. I just want to again thank people for taking the time to join this meeting. I've seen a number of questions pop up in the chat. As I say, happily to do my best to answer any ones that are directed to me. As I say, if we can't get through all the questions, we will absolutely go out to people going forward. And what we'll all look to do, there was a number of links I was thinking of sharing, but what I'll probably be better doing is in a follow-up briefing to members, if we put some of the links in to some of the things that I was thinking of. So I will pause there and hand back to you then, Tracy. And again, thanks very much for the invitation.
Okay, thank you, Hector. And again, I think it's worth noting that Hector is also a member of the National Black Members Committee. So, any sort of issues that relate to Black members or your experience as a Black member, please feed it into your National Black Members Committee representative so that we can take those issues forward. As I said, there are a number of questions coming through, so that's really, really good. So what's happening is that they are coming through to me directly as well, so that we'll try not to miss any of them. If we do miss any of the questions at the end, what we'll do is we'll try and follow them up in the briefing, just so that everyone feels that their question's been answered and they've been heard. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to our next speaker, who's Jordan. Jordan's going to cover the Home Office's group's involvement in opposing the pushback policy and the Miranda scheme, and encourage members to contact him, because obviously if they want to get more involved, then we absolutely welcome that. And I think for those of you who don't know what the pushback policy is, this is, we all know the rhetoric coming from the government and now in the media and now the far right about trying to stop the small boats, and that was the bit that instigated this whole pushback policy during the time of Priti Patel. So without further ado, I'll hand you over to Jordan. Jordan.
Thanks very much, Tracy, and thanks to the National Black Members Committee and the Equality team for asking me to attend this meeting. I really do appreciate it. As Tracy said, my name is Jordan and I am the Equality Lead on the PCS Home Office Group Executive Committee. As you can probably tell from my extremely pale complexion, I am not black myself, but it's something that I've not had personal experience of racism, but it's something that I've been a witness to. And the older I've gotten, the more confident I've gotten in expressing my views, the more I've tried not to be a passive ally, but to become actively anti-racist. And given that the topic of this call is celebrating Black trade unionism, I just wanted to speak briefly about a very personal point. Something that really stuck with me in my journey to becoming a trade union activist was in 2007 during the bicentennial of the abolition of slavery in the UK, when my school took me to an event to mark that was attended by Paul Robeson Jr., the son of the singer and a very active participant in the American civil rights and labor movement. And what really struck me about that event is, while I knew a lot about the history of racism in the UK and America and about slavery, it was the first event I ever attended that was trying to tone itself towards a celebration of Black history rather than just a commentary on the awful things that have happened in our history. And it was really inspiring to hear not only about what the trade union movement had done to to oppose racism. And of course, the trade union movement originally wasn't a great ally of the civil rights movement, but the active role that Black trade unionists played in that struggle that often goes unspoken about. So I'm really glad that we're holding an event like this to celebrate that history today. As I said, I am the equality lead in the Home Office, and I think we have a very vibrant group. And it's for our active members like Jacqueline that we have been able to be so prolific in recent years in opposing some of the worst excesses of the previous government. Now, the Home Office is always going to have a contentious role in society. I think most people would agree that it performs a vital function in British society, but that doesn't mean that we can't talk about how it fulfills that function and to challenge it where appropriate. So I think in recent years, dating back to the advent of the hostile environment policies, there's been a question of what role PCS, and in particular the PCS Home Office Group, can play. And I think when the Windrush scandal broke, it took us a little bit by surprise. And there was a question at that point about how active can PCS be in opposing something that we all morally agree was a travesty and an injustice. But given that we are civil servants who are bound to serve the policies of the elected government of the day, what room for maneuverability is there for PCS to take a part in supporting our Black members and Black people in British society in general? And I think it was a lesson that we learned. We were able to make some moderate gains at the time by ensuring that there was somewhat adequate training and e-learning available to Home Office staff, particularly around the serving diverse communities e-learning courses that would, we hoped, ensure that there was a basic level of understanding about what the causes of Windrush were, what value the communities that came into the UK at that time brought to British society. But we knew at the time that it didn't go nearly far enough. But we learned a lot of lessons from that we were able to bring to bear in opposing the pushback policy. Now, as Tracy said, that was a policy that the government of the day was determined to pursue that would have meant that for small boats crossing the channel, our Home Office members would be required to literally push those boats away from the British shore. And something that we learned from that experience is that we can challenge the morality of a policy, we can challenge it on legal grounds, but also we have the capability as a group to challenge it if it brings our members into a position where they may be in breach of international law and therefore may be subject themselves to the penalties for that. And that gave us a way that we could constructively challenge these policies. Of course, we took the pushback policy to court, and the day before it was due to be heard, the government backed down. So that was an enormous win for PCS as a union and for the Home Office Group specifically. But that, of course, was followed up by the Rwanda scheme. And as members, I'm sure, are very aware by now, particularly if you attended last week's session where Paul O'Connor spoke about this in great detail, that was a long-term legal challenge that we brought to bear against the government. And it went through several stages, the High Court and the Supreme Court. And even when we'd won at the Supreme Court, the government sought to pass a domestic UK law, basically to make that ruling redundant, which we've challenged. And thankfully, we've got to a position now where the Rwanda scheme has fully been quashed. Which I think is something that every member of PCS can be incredibly proud of, because that was a victory for us as a union in collaboration with our partners in Care for Calais and other migrant advocacy groups. But something I'd like to say while I'm on this call is that something we've struggled with in the Home Office Group recently is with our Black representation. So for the past 2 years, we've not had anyone on the group executive committee who identifies as Black. And as the equality lead, I'm obviously extremely concerned about that, because I think that as much as I can try to empathise, I don't have that personal experience, and we're missing a vital perspective on the group executive committee. We do have 2 ring fence positions for Black members to join, and we also have a seat on the National Black Members Forum that can be taken up. So please, if anyone on this call is a member of the Home Office Group and would like to become more involved, please feel free to contact me. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Jordan. And I think, yeah, that's really, really important, just to make sure that all departments are represented on the National Black Members Committee for reasons I've already highlighted. So we've got one final speaker without, you know, and that's Angela. And again, I'm going to let Angela introduce herself. The questions are coming through thick and fast. Some of them will already have been answered in the chat. And so if I don't answer your question, ask your question directly, that would be the reason why. But without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Angela Grant. Angela, over to you. Angela, you're muted. Try again. Still muted. Right, you're on mute again. Try now.
Tracy, she's not on mute. I think there's an issue.
Problem. Right, so so
She
what
might
I'll
have
do
to
is,
come out and come back in. That might sometimes do it. I'm not.
So while Angela's doing that, I just want to say that, you know, the points that have been made so far are really, really important, because I think, you know, it does make a difference that we have that diversity within PCS structures. You know, obviously, you've heard from Hector, you've heard from Jordan, you've heard from Jacqueline, and, you know, with luck, you'll hear from Angela as well, who's on the National Executive Committee, also remember the National Black Members Committee. But I think for me, that, you know, I've been really, really proud, because I'm also part of Stand Up to Racism, and I've been really proud to say the work that we've been doing as PCS. And just while we're waiting for Angela to come in, a couple of other shout outs for me who's inspired me personally have been Zita Holborn, who was in PCS. She's no longer in PCS. She's moved on to other things, and also Annette Rochester. So they're two black women trade unionists who have personally motivated me and inspired me. And for me, first time I went to conference as a 19-year-old, you know, many years ago, seeing other black women speaking loud and proud enabled me to feel that I can speak loud and proud too. I've always done it anyway, but it just made that difference. So, you know, I think it's really, really quite interesting. And I think somebody's just put a comment in the chat. I have a friend who's a black rep that's feeling quite downbeat about things and isn't on the call. Is there any way you can access the recording? Yeah, the recordings will come out later on. But also, if they want to reach out to any of us on the National Black Members Committee and they are a rep, that's part of our role as well, to support local reps, because we know how isolating it can be to be a rep anyway, regardless of, you know, whether you've got a protected characteristic or not. But especially if you're somebody that might be experiencing racism both in and out of the workplace, we know it can be a mountain to climb. So yeah, by all means, Ravinda, if you want to just pass on any of our details, we're more than happy to reach out to this rep, because we want to make sure that where people are making the decision to become a rep, that they feel supported to do so. So yeah, I think Laura's just put something in the chat. So Angela seems to be having issues getting back in. So I think what I'll do,
Tracy,
yeah,
can you hear me? I am back on. Can you hear me now?
Oh, excellent. Okay, are you on? Oh,
Yeah.
Brilliant. So I'll hand you over to Angela.
Yeah.
Angela,
Okay, thank you.
brilliant. Over to you, Angela.
Okay, yeah, so can you hear me okay? Yeah, right. So as I was saying when you couldn't hear me just then, thank you to all of you, you know, once again for coming in on your lunchtime. I know a lot of you have come in when you should, you know, you finishing work, jump on for lunch, and then you have to go straight back to work. So it's really good to have you here, and it is really, really important that you're here. So to start with, just a little bit about myself. I am a member of the PCS National Black Members Committee. And people say to me, do you always feel you have to justify that? Because, you know, Jordan has just said, hasn't he, you know, you can tell by my pale skin, I'm not a black worker, I'm not a black member. But I certainly am a black woman, and I cannot tell people enough how difficult it has been in civil service of all places, because it's in civil service when you begin to identify, you have to fill in your forms and you identify, and certainly in PCS you identify as who you are, the person that you are, and then people go, what, you're black? And I'm like, yeah, I've always been black, my whole family are black, and it's never been any different to me until I came, as I say, to civil service. So I am, my granddad's from Barbados, my dad's a black man, my family are from, you know, right across Africa, Barbados. So I have always identified, and I will never, ever apologise for identifying. So that is the first part. So I sit on the NBMC, National Black Members Committee, and I'm also the president of the DWP group. Now, I mention that because we talk about structural racism, and sitting in DWP, that is a department that looks after our communities. We serve the communities. And in DWP, we have seen racism rising at a faster pace than it has risen in, since the 40s, 50s and 60s. Knowing that we are public sector workers, it is really important that we are on the front foot as representatives. And I say that again because everybody that is sitting on this call can join PCS. We can become advocates for our union and we can become reps. Now, I'm talking about DWP. We've heard the issues in Home Office, with Rwanda, what government were doing, the pushback policy and Windrush. The best way for us to deal with our Black workers' issues is for us to be able to put those priorities on the table. And if we are not there, there's a saying, isn't there? Nothing about us without us. If we're not there, we cannot have those priorities addressed. So I will always fight for Black workers, always fight for Black rights. And I'm hoping that following this event, we'll have lots of people as well joining up to become, to become reps, to become advocates, to get more involved in PCS, but also, if you have, white colleagues, if white people are going to be listening in to this, to become allies. What better ally is there than to hear Jordan David talking about the work that he does? And, he has seen racism since he was a child. He's seen all these things happening, and he steps in and he stands beside, not in front or behind, but he stands behind us as workers and brings his experience as a rep to make sure that he is fighting the fight alongside us. And that is what we need from allies. So talking about DWP, first of all, personal casework. When you're in your department, in your local departments, whether it's DWP, Home Office, wherever you may be, HMRC, we see these personal cases coming in, and as reps, we challenge them. So on the ground, our reps will pick up the personal case and they will go in and they will look after you. But what we do on our group executive committees is we help to create policies. Now, when members come to us with certain cases, we can pick up trends in those cases and we can say to our policymakers within our departments, this is what's happening. Here is a gap in the policy and you need to bridge it. With race discrimination, it's not like disability, is it? You can't get a note to prove that you're being discriminated against. It's not that way. So how do you do it? In DWP, we worked with the department to build a race toolkit, and what that does is give steps that you can go through to raise a case, but it also gives information. I don't like this unconscious bias. I don't like the saying, because I believe all bias is conscious. I don't think that you can be unconsciously biased. I think you have biases that are built in. You might be uneducated, might not understand about racism and some of the things that you're saying, but I do not believe that the majority of people that say, oh, it was unconscious bias, they didn't mean it. I don't believe that it is an unconscious bias. I think if things are said, that they are said because they are meant, and we sometimes give people a get out of jail card by saying it's unconscious bias. And it's a little bit like having Black History Month. And of course, Black History Month is our month to celebrate. We celebrate our achievements. But what we find is that we have some people having events and thinking, I've done my little bit for Black people now. I've paid my lip service for this year, so I can put that to bed now and I can go back to doing what I do. Black History Month is not for that. Black History Month is about us showcasing, explaining, teaching people about what we have done as Black trade unionists, about what our ancestors have done, about talking about strike action, Black people, bringing strike action. I just want to mention that, that 3,000 years ago, the Egyptians building the Valley of the Kings, the down tools, the first strike that's ever recorded, those Egyptians down tools, and they won themselves more food because they weren't being fed enough. And then we look at 1977, the Grundig strike, Black women, immigrant workers, again, down in tools, going on strike to win. From the year 3000 to 1977, to today, we are still having to fight about our issues. And yet we see people saying, well, Black History Month, we've put an event on in our workplace, so we've done our bit. There is still so much work for us to do. And this now, Black History Month, this event is about us taking back the narrative, taking back our heritage, our the stories that we need to tell, and taking back this, you know, all of these Black people coming in and stealing our jobs. Actually, you're quick enough wanting us to come in to take all of those jobs when the country was on its knees after the war, and you were giving everybody, you know, dual heritage. You can come across and you can have UK heritage, you can have a British passport. And then we see that, you know, the Windrush scandal, where they want to take all of that back because they've had the work now. Well, do you know what? Slavery ended a long, long time ago, and we will not see our Black workers treated that way. Come in, used, abused, and then off you pop. We don't need you anymore. And that is why we have to build our strong unions. PCS is a really progressive union, and I've got to say I'm so proud of our union. And that is because of things like the pushback policy and the Rwanda plan and the work that we have done building a safe passage policy. And if you've not seen the safe passage policy, sorry, Laura, I should have sent some links over, but I didn't. I should have said the links that we might have needed, but we can get them all sent over to you. If you've not seen our safe passage policy, safe visa entry into this country, please have a look at it. Send it to your MP and ask your MP to get behind it, because we want to stop the small boats, don't we? Of course we do. But we don't want to do it by pushing people back into the water, like, you know, the Black and Brown MPs were doing. When you see Black and Brown MPs and you think, at last, we've got people that look like us, look like our families. And then you see them making these really, really racist policies. So we want to stop the boats, but we want to do it by making sure that we have got a safe visa policy so that people can have safe passage into the UK without having to cross the boats in those dangerous waters, risking their lives. So if you've not looked at that already, you know, have a look at it. And that's why I am proud of our union. You know, Hector has talked about the reps that have gone before, so I won't cover that. There's a lot, when you come in last, there's a lot that's already been said when you're speaking last. But so I won't talk about the reps, because, you know, Hector has already, you know, really well articulated the shoulders that we stand on now within, you know, the giants that we stand on. But what I do want to talk about is that the staff, the PCS staff, you know, our Black workers, our full-time officers that are looking after us in our union, because as reps are on the ground, we have to have, you know, a good cadre of staff that are supporting our union also. And Diane Ebanks, you know, fantastic. One of the best Windrush speeches, I say it every time I see her, the best speeches on Windrush I've ever heard was Diane Ebanks when she talked at one of our Black workers events in the Northwest. Diane is fantastic. She's a trades unionist. She's been a rep, and she is now a full-timer, bringing her trades unionism into, you know, into our union. We have, you know, Laura is on the call now. We have Diane Shepherd is on the call also, I think. There are so many of our good, strong representatives that have become, you know, full-timers that are trade unionists. They're not PCS, sadly, anymore. They have to be GMB, you know, but that's just how it is. But still members of their union, still working for us and still doing the right thing. And then we see that I've talked about the racist attacks and, you know, racism in the workplace and how tiring it is, how wearying it is, how we go home, you know, reps are crying tears because of, you know, Hector said some of it is absolutely abhorrent, and it does affect your mental health a lot of the time when you know you're seeing your family and you represented in the people that you are supporting, and you're thinking that could be my mum, that could be my brother, these are our people, and we have to fix this. So when we look at race discrimination cases and how it affects your mental health, how is it affecting the mental health of the people that are going through it, that are being racially abused in the workplace? And one of the things that we always talk about is, if you have a mental health injury that comes from race discrimination, get it reported on the SOARS, on your accident book. Indeed, it's a SOARS system. If you are feeling that you have to go to your GP because of what you are going through and you begin to suffer, you know, we've got members that have PTSD from issues in the workplace, speak to GP. And if you need to do that, get it recorded as an injury at work. It is an injury in the workplace, an injury to your mental health. Islamophobia, racism and Islamophobia. And, you know, some people say, well, this is Black History Month. Why are we talking about Islamophobia? Why are we talking about the Asian community? Because we are all the Black community. We are the Black community in PCS, and we will not have division within our union. You know, Tracy read out the ethos of PCS at the beginning, who we cover, and we cover all, you know, the diaspora, and no matter if you are dual heritage like myself, I'm multi-heritage like myself, we belong within PCS Black members. If you have a history of colonialism, of attack, of racist abuse, of, you know, white imperialists coming after your people, you belong within PCS Black members. So Islamophobia is huge for us, and we always protect also our Muslim members. We are seeing it so much now with what's happening with, you know, the abhorrence in Palestine, the genocide that is happening in Palestine. We've seen what happened in the Ukraine, and I am gonna put a bit of a I'm going to speak about those two things differently, really, because in the Ukraine there was safe passage. People from Ukraine were brought into this country safely, and you know, a lot of people have said that it comes to the color of a person's skin. If you're more lighter skinned, you know, you're treated better. But if the darker you are, the worse you are treated. And what, again, I keep using the word abhorrent. It's like it's been my word of the year, I think. But you know, what a disgrace that we've got a government that are not, you know, stopping the arms sales to Israel when they are seeing, you know, Black children, Black and brown people being murdered on our television screens. So what's happened with that is that we've got members that are feeling really vulnerable in the workplace, and they are being put on disciplinaries. If Mohammed Shafiq were here, I know he's travelling at the moment. Mohammed Shafiq is the chair of our National Black Members Committee, but he's also one of the vice presidents in DWP. And Mohammed Shafiq has picked up over 30 cases of discrimination relating to Palestine. Again, how does that affect you as a rep? But how is that affecting people within our workplaces? Absolute disgrace. And that's why we have to be strong as a union. We have to have reps that are well trained, that understand the Equality Act 2010, you know, that understand all of the legislation that we might need. You know, even GDPR has come into some of these cases. So there's a lot of legislation that we need to be looking at, and a lot of work to do. And I know I've been speaking for ages, Tracy. I'm not sure how long. Have I gone over time? I'm not sure if I have or not. So I'll just talk about just a couple more things that I wanted to mention. And that
I'll give you 2 minutes. I'll give you 2 minutes, Ange, because you had to log back in.
I will be I'll be really quick. In fact, I think I've come through all of the notes, because a lot of it has already been covered by others before. Hector covered race audits and all of that kind of thing. So I'll just stop by saying, please get involved with PCS. Please be involved with the union. Look at, again, our anti-racist, anti-fascist strategy. We have got a fantastic booklet there that you can look at. It will give you some ways of challenging the rhetoric that you hear out on the street. You know, get involved in all of the events that we have, and please sign up to be a rep in your department if you have not done that already. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you, Angela. That was really powerful and really inspiring. And I think really, just to kind of add to that, the PCS anti-racist, anti-fascist strategy is a live document. And what happens is it gets updated every time there's a different threat, whether it be from the far right or whether it just racism in general. And again, you know, I think it's no accident, I think, since Southport, that the union have been very strong in advocating that we support any anti-racist, any anti-fascist action, whether it's local or national, because we recognise that fighting racism is not just about fighting it in the workplace, but it's also in our local communities, because we're all part of a community, aren't we? And what it does, it enables us to stand shoulder to shoulder, but know that you're complying with union policy, so that if there's any sort of worries or anxieties around what's going to happen if work find out I've done this, well, you're covered, because we're affiliated to organisations and you're just carrying out your duties as a active PCS member. So I think that's really important. Another thing I just wanted to shout out, another person I want to shout out, sorry, is Tracy Hilton, who is the vice chair of the National Black Members Committee. Tracy is on the call, and you'll see if you've been keeping an eye on the chat, she's been posting lots and lots of links. So thanks, Tracy, for doing that, because again, I think it's really important that people do know where to get the information if they need it. So again, as I say, because I'm conscious of time, what I'm going to do now is move on to the questions. There's been a lot of questions that have come to me via the chat, but I think the first question I'm going to take is just a general question. Jacqueline's going to answer it. And the question is, how can unions use Black History Month as an opportunity to not only honour past achievements, but also drive forward initiatives that address ongoing racial inequalities within the workforce? Jackie, if I can ask anyone responding on the panel, if we can be as concise as possible to get as many questions answered as we can.
Yeah. Okay.
Jackie?
Yeah, thank you, Tracy. Can you hear me? Okay. So one of the things what we can do to honour both past achievements and address ongoing racial inequalities is through education and awareness campaigns. What unions can do is host workshops, seminars and panels just like this, where we can emphasise the contribution of Black unionists. These events, they can also highlight the current disparities that Black employees face, such as pay gaps, underrepresentation in leadership and also racial discrimination. We can also advocate for policy changes. I think Angela touched upon that, but Black History Month can be used as a platform to push for specific policies that address racial inequalities. And this is such as mandatory diversity and inclusion training, anti-discrimination policies, and initiatives to increase the representation of Black workers in leadership roles. I think highlighting Black voices as well, that's quite important, and creating a space where we can speak, you know, comfortably, where we can share our experiences and insights. And this can include spotlighting things through newsletters, social media campaigns, podcasts to raise awareness and inspire change. Again, collaborating with external organisations. I know with Windrush this was done a lot, where the Windrush team went to churches and community centres, and that way you can get a better understanding of the needs of Black workers, and that way you can collaborate on initiatives that address systematic barriers. Mentoring.
Thank you, Jacqueline.
Yeah,
sorry. That's all right. That's no problem. That was a really good answer. Thank you for that. So I think the first question we'll take has come from Cheryl Govin. So Angela, Hector, I don't know which one of you want to answer it. So the question is, excuse me, have you got any tips for those starting out on their union journey? So who wants to answer that, Angela or Hector? Show of hands.
I'm happy. Okay, yeah. I mean, I think the key thing is, I mean, what I found really useful when I started my journey all those years ago is I was in a really supportive branch, a local branch, and there was lots of experienced reps who were really helpful and sort of gave guidance and support, and that's really helpful. You might not have that, but I think the key thing is if you're interested in becoming a rep, basically you can reach out to people even if not immediately in your own branch. So I think that's the key route. That's the really crucial thing. I mean, what sometimes happens with unions, I mean, unions are rules-based organizations. Sometimes the bureaucracy of a union can get a bit unwieldy. You think, what the hell is all this about and stuff, and that can be difficult. But I think the key thing is to have that supportive network of reps, even if they're in your local branch or either somewhere, even maybe not in your direct in your own branch, but a nearby branch. The key thing is have that support network, and that's part of the thing that we try and do at the MBMC is to provide support to new reps, Black reps who want to get on in the organisation. So, I'll pause there because I'm conscious of the time. And Angela's got a hand up.
Angela,
yeah. Just quickly, just because Hector is dead right, I've got my thumb up agreeing with all of that, but I just want to mention something quickly, because when I started out, I almost left very quickly as well, because I found some hostility being a woman in a very male-dominated environment. And I thought, you know what, I'm not having this, but because I'm not backward and coming forward, am I? I did speak to other reps about, you know, what was happening. And it was actually Martin Kavanagh, because he's in my branch, that said, what do you mean that's what's being said? What do you mean that's what's happening? So as Hector said, if you feel any, if you feel like that you're struggling with any of it, speak to somebody, even if they're in another branch, because they will give you advice as how to stay. Don't just walk away, because you belong here. You are a member of this union, and you are valid here. So just to make that point as well. Thanks, Cheryl.
Yeah, and I think just to echo that, I think as well, if you're moving branches as well to another part of the civil service, I've quite often had people signposted to me from people that are either on group executive committee or, saying, oh, by the way, we've got somebody who was a rep or somebody that's interested and they work in your area. So yeah, we do try and signpost across, but if you are interested, speak to somebody, whether or not they're in your branch. Next question comes from Tracy Hill. And it's to do with the Race Equality Task Force. And the question she's asking, what do you think should be the priorities for Black trade unionists going forward? And are you aware of how PCS has contributed to the TEC Race Equality Tracker or the Anti-Racism Tracker? Who wants to answer that? I'm assuming Hector, possibly, because you're part of the task force.
Well, I'm not part of the task force. We contributed to it. So let's be clear. All the unions contributed to the task force. So we were party to drawing it up. What I think needs to happen, because it is an ongoing thing. So what needs to happen is there needs to be ongoing commitment from all unions to actually delivering some of the aims and objectives on the tracker. So there needs to be a discussion at the national executive, for example, about how we take this forward. And it's not just about, for example, PCS in terms of how it supports its members in the workplace, but it's actually PCS as an employer, because PCS is an employer of staff. For example, how Black staff in PCS, what their experience is as Black staff, that's all part of it. So it's an ongoing work of progress. I mean, one of the key things with the tracker, because it is on the PCS website, there will be no hiding place. If we're not seeing me delivering, then people will know we're not delivering. So I'm keen that we do actually undertake specific activities to take this walk, so we can actually show these are the things that we're doing. So I think that what sometimes happens with PCS, we often do stuff, but we're often not very good at recording and actually publicising this is what we actually have done. So we're going to have to do that with this, in my view.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with that. There's been a few questions about Embrace, but I think Hector's answered those in the chat, so we won't address those particular ones. Let's have a look. There's another question from Evgeny Loskutov. I hope I've pronounced your name properly. And again, this is a question for Jacqueline and Hector, but again, very, very brief responses, please, because I think you've covered some of it. What challenges have you faced in addressing racism within the civil service as Black trade unionists?
Very quickly, it's some of the classic ones. The angry Black man, all that type of stuff, assertive, aggressive, all that type of stuff. And often I do quite a lot of legal casework or tribunal work, and I know anytime I put in a race discrimination claim, that is when really people start getting really, really funny about stuff, more than other forms of discrimination, actually, in my experience. So those are the types of challenges is there. But, it's got better recently. To be fair, my personal experience has got better, because we've had some uncoupled conversations about some of this stuff. So it is difficult, but, you just got to keep at it.
Angela, I was gonna call you in anyway, interestingly, because I wanted to hear from you. Go on.
Yeah, I just want to say that it's not just those that are visibly Black that will see racism or hear racism, because they won't speak as much in front of those that are visibly Black, because they know that obviously it's going to be challenged immediately. And the amount of time, I think that's probably why I hear it more and I see it more, and not just on the shop floor, not just in the workplace, but also within our management teams when they're speaking and telling me. I don't have to be a Black person to understand Black people's issues, Angela. And I'm like, so where are the seniors in our department that are visibly Black? And then they will say to me, well, there's a very small pool to fish from. There's a small pool to fish from because you're not Black, you don't understand Black people's issues, and you're not bringing in enough Black seniors to understand those priority issues of Black people. So just to make that point, that it's not just when you're visibly Black that you see racism. Sometimes you see it more if you're like myself and you don't have as much melanin, sadly. Thank you, Tracy.
Okay, Jacqueline, did you want to jump in, or are you happy with the responses so far?
I'm happy. I mean, to echo what Hector said, definitely sometimes you're seen as the angry Black woman, but if I was white, I'd be seen as assertive. So yeah, I understand fully what you're saying, Hector.
Yeah, and I can say that I have a similar experience as well as being the angry woman as well, because obviously I'm of mixed heritage, but yeah, I get exactly the same. Even now, you know, you get what you say gets laboured as being making people uncomfortable, making people question
bullying
themselves.
people.
Absolutely,
Bullying
and
people
I'm actually
all
going
the
through that
time.
as we speak, you know, so there you go. But
Yeah.
yeah, just to move on to the questions, I think again the bit about the hyperlinks, yes, we are going to send a document out with all those links on it, so that will happen. There's a question about whether or not Mohammed is going to record all the incidents. Again, if you take that up with Law, I think her details might be in the chat, so we can kind of document any incidents relating to Palestine or anything like that. That, you know, I think it's really, really important. I think really for me, I think what we're going to do, because I'm, you know, conscious we are coming towards the end of time, but I just wanted to shout out a couple of things really. First of all, just to say that this is the second out of 4 events. And I think we are recording all of the events, but I think it's just important to mention the things. Black History Month is not something that's just for October. As far as we're concerned at the National Black Members Committee, we are part of British history. We are here, we're staying. We've been here since the earliest recorded one, you know, that you don't see in the history books, is that there was a Roman garrison by Hadrian's Wall that was made up purely of people from Africa. All right, so black people have been here before Windrush. We've been here and we're staying here. We're not going anywhere. So I just wanted to make that point. The next session for next week is going to be advancing black careers in the civil service, because again, I think we've already talked about some of the barriers that black people face, not just in the civil service, but in society in general. And we've got some really good speakers. It's going to be chaired by Anne Greer, who's also HMRC rep on the National Black Members Committee. And our guest speaker is going to be Justin Placide, who is a senior civil servant and co-chair of the Civil Service Race Forum. So that'll be a really good one to go to if you are interested in progression, because again, it's somebody that's actually progressed, but you'll get some really useful hints and tips from that. And then we're also doing a Facebook Live event on week 4, and that's in the evening at 6:30 till 8 o'clock. And it's going to be called Resisting the Rise of the Far Right. That's going to be chaired by Mohammed Shafiq, who is our chair. And the guest speakers are going to be Naila Ashraf from Stand Up to Racism, Fahim Ahmed, who's a trainee lawyer and assistant secretary of Birmingham Stop the War Coalition, Dr. Louise Raw, who's a historian, and she's a really prominent anti-fascist activist. And also you'll have PCS National President Martin Kavanagh. So I think, if you know, spread the word, because that will be on the PCS Facebook page, but please make sure that you come along to that. And tomorrow is anti-racism wear red day. So any of you that are going into work, try and wear reds, just to make the point we want to fight racism, and it's an ongoing struggle, and we will certainly carry on with that fight, and we're here to help support any of you, so please reach out to us. And you know, because we want to make sure that our voices are amplified. For those of you who don't know me or haven't met me yet, you'll know that I'm also somebody that will stand up, and I'll stand on the shoulder of all those that have come before me. One person we didn't mention, and I know Angela was going to mention him, was Roger Mackenzie. So Angela, I'm going to just let you mention Roger Mackenzie, because although he's not PCS, I think he's been a really prominent black trade unionist, going back to the theme of today's conversation. Angela?
Yeah, I was going to mention Roger, and Roger is a fantastic trade unionist, and he worked in the CWU, black worker. He did so much work within his union, and I wanted to mention him quickly because it's I think it's an example of how we can move on after our trade unionism, because Roger went to be the international editor, reporting on stories in the Morning Star. And it gave him the ability to speak outside of the union about all of the issues that are faced. And in fact, he actually did something on Black History Month. And he also mentioned, because I keep talking about the Egyptian workers, Roger has mentioned that. When you said that just then, just flicked up earlier, Tracy, to look at it. And he actually talks about the Egyptian workers and on and on and on. But it's really interesting if you listen to Roger's, the stories that he writes. But also, I think you can see from his writing, when I mentioned about being tired and being weary with how people treat Black people still, and how we treat Black History Month, and how it's performative, and these actions that people make. And we need, of course, we need the events. We need them, and we need our white allies putting these events on. But it's about making sure it's not just for October. This is us making sure we are fighting racism and being actively, as Jordan said, actively anti-racist every single day of our lives. That is what we have to be doing, and that's what we want from our allies. But yeah, have a look at some of Roger's writing if you can. I think it's fantastic, and he opens up so many questions. You know, when you read things and you think, I want to have a look at that, I want to have a look at that. But it's really interesting reading, and it shows the work you can do throughout the union and then after your trade union actual journey is finished. Yeah, thanks, Tracy.
Right, any final words from any of the other panelists? Literally 1 minute each, or couple of sentences each. If you don't want to, you don't have to.
And I just want to thank people again for taking the time to join, because I know it's always tricky with, you know, lunchtime meetings. So I really appreciate it, people turning up to the meeting. So thanks.
And I think for me, because I've always got to have the last word and I'm chairing, so I can in this case, I just want to give a big shout out to the national demonstration that's taking place on the 26th of October, the Tommy Robinson demonstration. Sorry, before I go on to that, Jacqueline.
Yeah, just wanted to say thank you as well again. But also, I just wanted to highlight, I went to a really incredible event a couple of weeks ago. If you have the opportunity to get there next year, the Pan Equality event, it covers everything from racism, discrimination, everything. I just wanted to highlight that.
Yeah, and thanks for bringing that up, because we didn't touch on the intersectional aspect, because obviously Black people could also be disabled, they could be LGBT plus, they could have caring responsibilities, you know, they could men, women, non-binary. So yeah, when we're talking about fighting against any form of inequality, we're not just talking about it in silos, because they can cross over. Angela, I can see you chomping. Go on.
Because I think I just said Roger was CWU, and he's not. It's Unison. Just in case anybody goes to search for Roger Mackenzie, it's Unison. Just to clarify that. Sorry, Tracy.
Yeah, that's
but
okay.
Thank you, and thanks everyone.
Yeah, and like I say, the 26th of October, and PCS are actively supporting that. That's to mobilise against Tommy Robinson, who was called a demonstration in central London. And one of the things I can tell you as an active anti-racist, anti-fascist campaigner is that whenever they mobilise, we have to be there to oppose them, because the message we're trying to put across, and PCS wholeheartedly at the forefront of this, is that they are not the majority of people in this country. We are the majority. The majority of people in this country are anti-racist and anti-fascist. You just have to look at the history books, even though we know it's from a European perspective, that we've always fought back against fascism, you know, from the Battle of Cable Street, from the First World War, the Second World War. So really, we've got to carry on that legacy. And you as a PCS member can do your part, but knowing that you've got the full backing of your union. So if you haven't seen any information about the Stand Up to Racism national demonstration, please go through your PCS circulars that have been issued. Our union's been really, really solid, and we're really, really held in high regard within the trade union movement and the anti-racist, anti-fascist movement in general. And on that note, I just want to say thank you everyone for attending today. It's been a real pleasure hosting you. Hopefully see some of you next week, and hopefully see you on the Facebook event. But we will be recording these, and we will be sending it out at the close of Black History Month. Jordan, did you want to say anything quickly in closing?
I didn't know if there's Tracy. I was just
okay, no problem.
Bye.
Well, thanks everybody. We've run to time now. Thanks again for taking time to listen to us today, and hope we've inspired some of you. See you all soon. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye all.
Bye, everyone.
Everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Is up.